Welcome to Mollie Ann. We're inside of a cold storage building here. It's about 25 degrees, so you'll be seeing my breath. But we'll take a tour of the boat. We'll go inside and take a look around, look in the bilges, and look at what we can inside the building. We're pretty close to other boats, so we'll get the best we can, and we'll see what she's about. Here we are at the helm. This has a radar, color radar right here. It's a Raymarine RL70C. It has a place for a chart right here, two charts. And radar or a chart will appear on the screen. You can overlay them together. That's also interfaced to this, which is a Raymarine autopilot. This is more recent vintage. It's a hydraulic system. And here is a Garmin would go here. There's a secondary GPS that sits there. There is a VHF right here, and there is a spare VHF right here. Raymarine here, and a Cytex here. And down here, which I'll reposition the camera for, are washdown pumps and so forth. Here we have a bilge pump with an auto and a manual washdown pump. This is called a cold storage pump. It is a circulating pump. There are two windshield wiper controls here, a horn, video gauges. It shows 415 hours, voltmeter, temperature, and pressure. Instrument light switch here. This turns off the boat. You don't turn off the boat with a key, you turn it off with this momentary switch. These are cobalt controls with a speed and the gear shift. Over here is a searchlight control. That's off for now because he's got his autopilot wire coming through there, but that actually should be hardwired from behind. He was experimenting where he wanted his autopilot, and this is the best place for it. This is a heater control for the bus heater, low, medium, and high, floodlights, and docking lights. This is the spare VHF here. There is a fuel gauge for the starboard tank, a fuel gauge for the port tank, and also a voltmeter. I'm sorry, a water gauge here, fuel gauge here, and another water gauge. So there's 4 gauges for 4 tanks. And below this is a access just to get to your battery switches. That's where your battery switches are. This is a hydraulic control here, and there's a fill here for the hydraulics if you needed to. Again, that's your autopilot, your radar, compass, windshield wipers, and another VHF behind my left shoulder. On the cabin sole starboard side, there is a control for the inverter, and there's also a GFI circuit breaker down here. And over in the other corner, you can see one of the outlets for the bus heater right here. These are just ventilation. This will give you a better idea of what's inside here. And it has the battery switches here and here, as well as a hydraulic pump and some control boxes. Here's another view of the helm. 6'2". I get plenty of headroom over my head here. I can easily stand behind the wheel and not hit my head. I can see out the windows and clear the bow very easily. This is about the right height. And if I want, there's a chair. If I wanted to move it again, I would just probably use this chair, not put another chair in for now. And I can still see straight down over the bow, even with this boat slightly tilted up. I still can see over the bow. So this is actually quite comfortable to be here, but you don't even need it if you don't want to. Another thing you could do is have the autopilot going and sit here, but it's very easy to stand or sit and look out the windows on this boat. There is a sliding screen here, which is kind of rare to have. There's also a sliding window on the side too. The port side has those as well, and that allows a lot of ventilation in. There's a hatch down below. I'll show you that when we do go down below. See on the side of the control station, on the helm station, there are 2 gauges, DC volts, DC amperage, with all your DC selector switches there. And on top are 3 plugs for 12-volt accessories like an iPhone, iPad, or a spotlight, for example. On the bottom of the panel is a round, 2-inch round device. That's a high water alarm. This is the navigation seat, or a companion seat, sitting up on the engine box. This has up and down controls. I can also slide it back and forth here, so I can move around from my legs. And there's also a chart table here that's easy to set up. And use, or you could eat your lunch there, I suppose. It's a little bit of an angle. And this goes down. So this is the companion seat, totally isolated from the helm seat. And when I'm sitting forward, I'm looking between two different windows, but I have a really good command view of what's going on. I could probably steer the boat here too if I didn't worry about the throttle. But it's easy for someone to do navigation. This will turn. You can make the radar turn. Yes, the radar will turn towards me, so someone actually could be running the GPS while someone else drives. There's one overhead light here, and windshield wipers are on the sides, and there are 4 windows with 2 windshield wipers. This is the view facing forward from the aft igloo seat, and the camera's positioned just about at head height. This is over the engine box. Microwave, shelf, place for flares. This is where I had the little stove. There's also an engine access hole here as well, the forward part of the engine. I'll show you that. And this panel here and this panel down here both come off if you needed to get to other parts of the engine, like the flywheel or something along those lines. There's also a little coffee maker right here. There is an inverter on board, and there's an inverter for this, the microwave. It's all one, and there's a light overhead. A pretty large hanging locker here, little gate at the bottom, stainless steel rod with a shelf overhead, and over aft is the head itself, and there's a curtain for this. You could put a bifolding door in if you wanted to, but the curtain seems to work fine. And there's also a sink in the head, and lots of storage and plenty spacious room. I'll reposition the camera to show that. The head is a standard marine head, and has a raw water pump out. There's the control for the autopilot. There's also a light overhead, and a shelf with a storage area there in the center. And the boat has a sink with hot and cold pressure water and storage underneath. The head also has a drain on the floor that could be used when you're taking a shower with the pull-out nozzle that's the same as the one that's in the galley. The V-berth has 2 ventilating ports, an overhead hatch, and another port on the other side. So there's 2 ports, 1 hatch. There's a shelf forward, shelf on the sides, storage underneath, and a pretty big V-berth. It has an opening to the galley to let more light in, and there are reading lamps on the port side and the starboard side. The V-berth is quite wide at the end, so you don't need a centerpiece to sleep in it. You can have one made if you want to, of course. Again, I'm 6'2", and with my feet touching with my boots on, I still have 4 inches between my head and the edge here. Plenty of room. And the reading lights are all within access areas here, so I could easily sleep underneath this shelf. Cushions are about 3 to 4 inches thick. Under the companion seat is the access to the engine from the top. And it's a 250 horsepower Sisu. Very easy to get to, especially when the inside of the boat has access as well. You can get to practically everything on this engine, including the gear, which is unusual.